Welcome to Psychopath in Your Life. This is episode number 27. I'm your host, Dianne Emerson. I'm the author of the book Psychopaths in Our Lives, My Interviews, which is now available on Amazon and iBooks. And today I'd like to, first of all, give a large thank you to Jack, who participated in our 10-part series, which began with episode number 17 about psychopaths as children. And it was a very exhausting ordeal for Jack to go through. And as a community of people who support victims, we really honor and support everything he's given us as information to help us with this very complexing situation when it involves especially the children and the parents in their lives. So I'm hoping to have some feedback from Jack to announce at future datas to keep you updated on what's going on with his son. But I'll need permission and a conversation with him for that to happen first. So today, let's get on to a subject that I've been thinking about for a long time, and it's the eyes. The eyes are many times, at least I think of them, as a window to the soul. When it comes to psychopaths, the eyes are a fascinating discussion to have on the show because it has a whole lot of detail wrapped around it. Today I plan to chat about the eyes of psychopaths and to start to draw the connection between the mask of psychopaths, how the eyes play into this, and how it translates to the smile. There's a lot packed into that. We'll go into deeper detail in future podcasts when I plan to talk in more detail about the eye and smile connection. But I'd like to start off the podcast with reading one of my favorite quotes that relates to the eyes. This was from the author of Jane Eyre, Charlotte Bronte, and the quote is, "The soul, fortunately, has an interpreter, often unconscious, but still a faithful interpreter, in the eye." Now that quote really says it all, because the eyes work both in what image the psychopath will want to impress on us, and also our own eyes will possibly impress something that really isn't there. Their eyes can distort our thoughts and visions. Well, geez, how does that all work? And for years I wondered about the eyes and how they express both attraction to lure the victim in, but then they can turn into the black stare of the psychopath when the mask comes off and the eyes turn ugly, dark, and evil. And I read many quotes from victims at my forum over the years, and this is a great example of what the victim sees and feels. And I'll quote this. "The angry eyes, oh, I know those well. Whenever he was angry, his eyes frightened me. I don't back down. I don't show fear. I'm not easily intimidated. Often with him, it was so to my own detriment. His angry eyes would become very green and glass over. I've seen people compare psychopaths' eyes to those of sharks. I can easily see that. I know when I see those angry eyes, the mean stare was something I always tried to alter, to affect. Now I'm writing, I remember how he would often avoid looking at me, or if he was, wearing sunglasses. He wouldn't take them off when we fought. It was though he didn't want me to see his eyes. I learned to be afraid, intimidated, and to back down from those angry eyes." That quote really sums up a lot about what goes on with how those angry eyes, we were talking earlier, the eyes can be used as a magnet to lure you in from a very charming aspect, and it turns to a very dark, deep, and ugly aspect. So I often wondered if psychopaths, if they knew the effect their eyes had on other people or who were their victims, do they also have any more information other than what victims in their lives had told me about their exes? Loads of questions. And I had tons of questions along the lines of, psychopaths are described as wearing a mask. This mask hides the true nature of with this mask. However, if something happens to upset a psychopath and the mask drops, you see it. You never forget it. Kind of like looking into a scary black well and a feeling that evil is lurking. And those are some of the questions that I had, and I wanted to know if psychopaths, did they tell people that They know that people could see the anger in those eyes. I'm assuming by the quote above from the victims that there is an awareness on psychopaths that their eyes make them seem to give them away, let's say, okay? Or, over the years, victims had mentioned in detail the eyes. They usually talked about it when there's some sort of conflict. This mask, as we'll call it, drops off, and you'll see the real evil behind the eyes when you see the eyes behind the mask, the eyes that you'll never forget. Victims had responded to a question I posted years ago about psychopaths and their eyes, and I was wondering about how the eyes of psychopaths looked in photography. For years, I noticed that when I was looking at photos of an identified psychopath, it had the same smile that was a disconnect from the eyes. And we're going to go into this in a great deal of context later on. And a quote from one of them that really got me thinking, one of them being one of the psychopaths that I interviewed. So to be clear, we're talking a psychopath is saying this. The psychopath statement is, and I will quote, "The difference is that we wear a mask not to hide our flaws, but to exploit yours. The person you need me to be in order to trust, confide in, support, and promote is the person I will become. Being free of unpredictable emotional reactions and guilt, I am free to be whatever, whenever, and then change that when necessary." And that is the end of that quote. You see how they know that they have this mask, and it's like they're hiding you behind the mask. And the mask is that outgoing, charming personality which they'll use to lure you in. So I really have thought about this a lot, and I don't know if it's anger or frustration or by intent for effect that the mask gets dropped, or for lack of a better word. But there is an association that the gloves come off and the pupils get huge and black. That I can tell you for sure. And in most cases, a less sophisticated, non-socialized type has a harder time controlling it or getting it back into check after it happens. I mean, getting the mask back into check. In other words, reeling themselves back in. A skilled socialized psychopath could take a long time before you get a glimpse into what I'm talking about here with the mask and the eyes. It was described by one of the psychopaths that he understands that people see emotion in people's eyes. He said that his were more like a mirror, the way people saw what they want to see or what they are feeling. What he's saying here is that his eyes were like a mirror to people, and he commented that this also helps to gain the confidence of the victim, and concluded with, "Of course, I could do melty eyes, or wise, or deep, or regretful, or lively. Whatever I want, really." So, it's become quite clear to me that the psychopaths are aware that there's a shift in color when their eyes, but they're baffled over how it all worked. One of them snapped at me in the interview and said that perhaps he should go in front of a mirror the next time the mask drops so he could see for himself. They never like to be wrong. I wasn't trying to be right. I was just trying to find out how much they knew about the eyes, so it obviously was a bit of a sore spot there. So, and one psychopath told me that he thought his eyes go gray when he's mad at someone. And he's had people tell him that he's freaky scary when he's mad, and tell him that he stares at them like a robot that wants to kill them. He claimed that he was very good at maintaining his mask, though. It can be forgotten about for days, left securely in place. Only something truly unexpected and suddenly is likely to so much as wobble it. And of course, sometimes he says that he may choose to remove it for effect. So there's a lot of conscious feelings and thoughts that are going along with psychopaths and their masks, and how much they know that is going on behind it. The goal with what I found is the reason that psychopaths reach for socialization is because they have to learn through life which buttons to push and which ones will work, because they're not born with empathy or a conscience. So the eyes become the complex situation from the very beginning for them. And they do tend to learn early on, as in the quote earlier with the victim who talked about the psychopath in her life actually wearing sunglasses to keep the mask from being visible, to keep those eyes. And he's probably, and I'm just guessing here, he's probably responding to victims in the past telling him that his eyes were scary and this and that. So he did know enough to keep the glasses on to diffuse that. But you see how it all kind of still works backwards here, because it all starts off with the eyes. It's our contact. So we have to ask ourselves, do our eyes lie to us, or do we lie to ourselves? Or do we see things in other people that we hope is true, but it may not be. It very well could be an illusion. And this is very much how a socialized psychopath is thinking. They know they have this mask, and they know they have, but there's this tango going on where they don't really want the victim to know about them. They seem to all agree the eyes were a giveaway, but struggle with keeping the mask on. This happens from experience and how psychopaths learn what buttons to push to make their way through life. And clearly they have learned, at least the ones that I had interviewed, they had learned that people commented about their eyes. They said negative things about their eyes, and they said this after there had been an explosive event going on, when clearly the mask was not able to be maintained by the psychopath. And as one of them said to me, his goal was to be able to learn more and try to avoid those buttons, and therefore be able to keep that mask on a lot closer, tighter, and less likely to fall off. And one of them that I interviewed in the work environment said that when he starts to see himself start to go there, what he'll do is put himself into a self-imposed isolation within the office so that he can't be called out for this weird look in his eyes. So the eyes is something that we'll be coming back much more with, because it's a very fascinating part, because there's been a lot of I think there were country songs about your lion eyes or my lion eyes or can your eyes lie to you, and to all of those things I can say yes. If you want to see something badly enough and this person comes in front of you and they're asking the right questions, they're listening thoughtfully to your explanations, and it's all starting with a dance between the eyes. And you're going to know the betrayal when that mask drops and the eyes come forward. And trust me, it is like when I've spoken before, it's like seeing people talk about smelling a dead body, a smell you never forget. Once you look into the eyes of a psychopath, it's a look that you will never forget. I've personally seen it a few times, and I can attest to it. Now, I haven't been on the victim end, so I can certainly imagine what a horrifying ordeal that must be to be on the receiving end of those eyes. So anyway, we'll wrap it up for today. And I hope if you like this podcast, you'll subscribe and share on social media. So thanks in advance for any of you who are out there helping by sharing. And I do read all of your emails, and I'm enjoying them. I've received a lot of them that have given me things to think about for future shows. A good question came up during the interviews. I received a very nice email, a couple, and one of them talked about maybe in the future, which is not a maybe, but we will in the future talk about what about the children of psychopaths. We talked about children as psychopaths, but we in the future will need to talk about what happens to the children that psychopaths have and what kind of legacy is left for them. So that will be a part of a future show. So I also would really appreciate it if you'd hear from me, and you can go to psychopathinyourlife.com and email me there directly, or select to use a private email box for your communications. My direct email address is Dianne, Dianne, at Dianne Emerson, DianneEmerson.com. You could also find the podcasts on iTunes, Google Play, Facebook, YouTube, and the website. If you go to the website, psychopathinyourlife.com, which is the same name as the podcast, there's an audio box there and you can listen directly. So the show is for you, and I really appreciate hearing your thoughts and views about what you'd like to talk about in the future. So be safe out there, and remember, change begins one breath at a time, and try to stop painting those red flags white. Goodbye for now.